My name is Claire. I'm 41 years old and I live in a quiet home just outside Portland, Oregon. It's not too big, not too small. Just enough space for me, my husband Mark, and his son from a previous marriage, Ryan. He's 22 now. A good kid. Polite. Keeps to himself. He moved back in after college to save some money before figuring out what's next. That Sunday felt different from the start. The sky was a soft gray, the kind that makes you want to stay in pajamas and listen to the rain tap on the windows. Mark had left early for a last-minute fishing trip with his college buddies, one of those spontaneous things he does to stay connected to a past that no longer fits him. I didn't mind. The house was still. I had it to myself mostly. I spent the morning tidying up, folding laundry, watering the ferns, organizing the drawer that somehow always fills with spare keys and batteries that don't work. It felt good. Like I was making space for something I couldn't name. Ryan stayed up in his room most of the day. His music floated down in soft waves, more rhythm than melody. I liked that about him. He was quiet without being distant. Respectful without being cold. There was a calmness between us, an unspoken ease, like we both understood how to occupy the same space without pressing into it too hard. By mid-afternoon, I was leaning against the kitchen sink, sipping iced tea and watching the drizzle slide down the window. I felt restless. I couldn't sit still. The stillness of the house made my thoughts louder, and eventually I told myself I'd go check on Ryan. Just a quick hello. Maybe offer him a sandwich or ask if he wanted coffee. I walked upstairs slowly, the old wood creaking beneath my socks. His door was slightly ajar, just enough that the music slipped out and mixed with the faint hum of the fridge downstairs. I paused outside, raised my hand to knock. Then I heard a shift. A sound. Barely audible. Like someone adjusting quickly, surprised. I hesitated. I could have walked away. I probably should have. But something made me lean in. Curiosity concerned Ryan. I called softly. No answer. I leaned a little closer. Through the narrow gap, I saw him sitting on the edge of his bed, his back hunched slightly, head tilted down. He didn't see me. His hands moved with focus, like he was in the middle of something he hadn't expected anyone to interrupt. His face. He looked so focused. So exposed. Not in any dramatic way. Just real. It hit me then how little I truly knew him. The quiet boy who lived upstairs. The boy I passed in hallways and chatted with over dinner. But there, in that small flickering moment, he seemed like someone else entirely. Someone heavier, more complex, and fragile. I should have turned around, closed the door, pretended I'd never seen anything. But I didn't. For just a second longer I stayed. Watching. Not out of anything shameful. It wasn't that. It was something else. Something I still can't explain. And that's when it happened. He looked up. Our eyes met. And everything stilled. His mouth parted slightly, his eyes wide with the kind of shock you can't fake. Then just as quickly he reached for the blanket beside him and pulled it over his lap, his cheeks flushing deep red. "I didn't know you were there?" He stammered, his voice barely audible. I stepped back instantly, heat rushing up my neck. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." He shook his head gently. "It's okay," he said quickly though. His voice trembled. "Just give me a sec." I nodded, stunned, and turned back toward the stairs. But my feet didn't move. I stood there, gripping the handrail, my heart pounding in my chest, unsure what had just happened or what it meant. And deep down, I had a strange, heavy feeling. That moment, fleeting, awkward, silent, had just changed everything. I stood frozen at the top of the staircase, the light from the hallway barely brushing the edge of my arm. I could still hear Ryan's music playing faintly behind his door, though now it sounded farther away, like it belonged to a different room entirely, or a different version of the day that no longer existed. My hand was still on the railing, but I wasn't moving. I could have gone downstairs, back to the kitchen, back to my tea, the mail, the laundry. But something kept me there. That moment, his face, his voice, the look in his eyes when he saw me kept replaying in my mind like a scene I hadn't meant to watch but couldn't look away from. And the strangest part? It wasn't embarrassment that stayed with me. It was tenderness. A glimpse of someone stripped of every mask caught in the middle of a moment they thought was theirs alone. And instead of recoiling, some part of me leaned in softly, instinctively, as if I'd touched something true. The door creaked open behind me. I turned. Ryan stood there wrapped in a hoodie, now arms crossed, his face flushed but calm. He wasn't looking at me at first. Just somewhere over my shoulder, like he was still sorting through what had just happened. "I didn't think anyone was home," he said, his voice soft. "I guess I let my guard down." "I should have knocked," I said quickly. "It's my fault." He glanced at me then, just briefly. His eyes looked darker than usual, like something was weighing on them. "It's not your fault," he said. "You didn't do anything wrong. I just wasn't expecting company." He gave a short, breathless laugh, the kind that doesn't quite make it all the way to a smile. We stood there, neither of us sure how to steer the moment back to normal. "I'll leave you alone," I offered. Didn't mean to interrupt anything. But before I could step away, he lifted a hand slightly. Not to touch me, just to pause the moment. "Wait," he said. "It's okay. Really, I'm just kind of figuring stuff out lately." I nodded. "Yeah, I understand." A beat passed. And then another. "Do you remember," he said, suddenly smiling, "last summer when you forgot to lock the bathroom door?" I blinked. "Oh my God!" I laughed, covering my face with my hand. "Don't remind me. I wasn't trying to peek or anything," he added quickly, still laughing. "I just walked in at the worst possible moment." I groaned. "We agreed to never speak of that again." "I know," he said. "But I guess we're even now." And just like that, the tension cracked open a little. The air felt lighter. Not quite the same, but closer to what we'd known before. We were smiling. Not fully comfortable maybe, but no longer standing on opposite sides of something unspoken. Yet beneath the laughter there was something else. A shift. A quiet current moving beneath our feet. He leaned against the doorframe again, arms still crossed, but now watching me more openly. There was a question in his gaze, one he hadn't formed into words. I didn't answer it. I didn't know how. "I should probably let you rest," I said after a moment. But I didn't move. Neither did he. Instead, he said quietly, "Have you ever felt like you were supposed to be one version of yourself, but something else keeps tugging at you?" I looked up. "All the time," I said. "More often than I'd like to admit." He nodded slowly, as if that answer held more weight than I realized. The hallway was quiet again. But something had shifted, and we both felt it. Later that night, the house fell back into quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your skin, that makes the ticking of the kitchen clock feel louder than it should. I sat curled into the corner of the couch with a book in my hands, but the words blurred after a while. I kept reading the same paragraph over and over. My thoughts kept drifting back to the hallway, to Ryan, to his voice, the look on his face. That conversation shouldn't have stayed with me like it did. But it did. And the silence in the house only gave it more space to echo. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Soft. Hesitant. I looked up. Ryan appeared at the edge of the living room. He looked different. His hair was messy, his sweatshirt hung loose on his frame, and his expression held that mix of weariness and nervousness that always comes when someone has too much on their mind. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey," I replied, setting the book down. He hesitated, then offered a small smile. "I was about to make some tea. Thought I'd ask if you wanted a cup." The simplicity of the question caught me off guard. That actually sounds really nice, I said. He nodded, then turned toward the kitchen. And after a pause, I followed. The kitchen light was soft, almost golden. Ryan moved with slow precision, filling the kettle, pulling 2 mugs from the cabinet. There was a calmness in the way he handled things, but it felt like he was distracting himself too, like something inside him was wound tight. "Do you want honey?" he asked. "Yeah, please." We stood there quiet, the only sounds coming from the soft clink of metal against porcelain and the bubbling kettle as it warmed. When the tea was ready, he slid a mug across the counter to me. I wrapped my hands around it, grateful for the warmth. Ryan leaned back against the opposite counter, his own mug close to his chest. The steam rose slowly between us. "I've been thinking," he said, finally breaking the silence. I looked up. "About what you said earlier, that I don't have to be anyone's version of me, just my own." I nodded slowly, unsure of where this was leading. I guess I've spent so much time trying to be good, or easy, or whatever people needed. I forgot to ask myself what I actually wanted. His voice was steady, but his eyes gave him away. I didn't rush to respond. Instead, I set my tea down gently and crossed my arms in front of me, watching him carefully. "It's okay to feel lost," I said. "You're still figuring things out." "We all are." He let out a soft breath. "But what if I'm afraid of the answer? What if I don't like who I am when I stop pretending?" The question hung there, suspended in the air between us, so raw, so vulnerable. I walked around the island slowly and stood across from him, just a few feet away. "Then that's something you face one day at a time," I said, "and you don't have to do it alone." He looked at me, really looked at me. Not as his dad's wife, not as the person who made dinner or folded the towels or gave advice when asked. He looked at me like I was someone who saw him. And for a split second, I felt seen too. We both reached for our mugs at the same time, and our fingers brushed just lightly, but enough to make both of us pause. It wasn't a dramatic moment. Nothing grand. Just quiet. Charged. His eyes met mine again. "I don't really understand it," he said softly, "but when I'm around you, I don't feel like I have to pretend." The admission landed in my chest like a whisper and a thunderclap all at once. "I'm glad," I replied, my voice just above a breath. And then neither of us spoke. But the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like the start of something we couldn't quite name. I couldn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I turned the lamp off, then back on. I changed pillows. I tried closing my eyes and breathing deep, counting backward like the sleep podcasts tell you to do. Nothing worked. Every time I started to drift, my mind went back to the kitchen. To the moment Ryan looked at me, not past me, not through me, but into me. As if I were the only person who had ever seen him clearly. And maybe for a moment I had. I tossed the covers aside and sat up, the house completely still around me. The clock read 1:14 a.m. I padded down the hall barefoot, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I wasn't planning to go to his room. That's what I told myself. I just wanted water. Maybe some air. But when I passed his door, I saw the faint glow of his lamp spilling through the crack beneath it. And something in me paused. The same pull from earlier. Not curiosity. Not concern. Just presence. A kind of gravity that didn't make sense but also didn't feel wrong. I raised my hand, hesitated, then knocked lightly. A beat. Then his voice. "Come in." I opened the door. Ryan sat at the edge of his bed in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair a little messy, eyes soft. There were shadows under them. The kind people get when they've been lying awake for hours trying to untangle something that refuses to make sense. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. I shook my head. "No." I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and stood near the edge of his bookshelf, suddenly unsure what to say. He looked down at his hands for a moment, then patted the space beside him on the bed. I hesitated, then sat. Not close, but not far either. A few feet of space, a breath between us. I've just been thinking, he said. A lot. About earlier. He nodded. About everything, really. Who I am. What I want. What I'm allowed to feel. What I'm afraid of feeling. His voice was quiet but steady, like he was trying to speak a truth he hadn't shared before. You don't need to have it all figured out, I said gently. He turned slightly toward me. But you make it sound like I'm allowed to be unsure. Like, I don't have to have all the answers. Because you are? I said. No one expects you to be perfect, Ryan. I don't think I ever believed that before. A long silence followed. Not awkward, just full. Then he spoke again. There's this pressure I've always carried. To be a certain kind of son. A man, I guess. But it never felt real. It always felt like a costume I had to wear. I looked at him. I know that feeling, I said softly, of not quite fitting into the version of yourself people think you should be. His eyes met mine again, searching. Do you ever feel like people only see a part of you? Like no one really gets the whole picture all the time, I said. Until recently. His expression shifted slightly, almost surprised. What changed? He asked. I didn't answer right away, because the answer was sitting 2 feet in front of me. Instead, I said, sometimes it takes being truly seen by someone else to see yourself differently. Ryan leaned back, resting his hands behind him on the mattress. His eyes drifted to the ceiling, then to me. I don't want to go back to how things were, he said. Before today. Before we talked. I nodded. Me neither. There it was again. That quiet shift. Not loud. Not messy. Just real. His hand brushed the edge of the blanket beside me close enough that I could feel the warmth of it. And for a moment I thought he might reach for mine. But he didn't. And I didn't move either. We just sat there. 2 people in a room that suddenly felt like the only one in the world. We sat there for what felt like forever. No words. Just the hum of the lamp, the rhythm of our breath, the quiet weight of things unsaid pressing in around us. Ryan shifted slightly beside me, his fingers now resting just inches from mine on the blanket. He wasn't looking at me, but I could feel it. The way his attention hovered, the way the air between us seemed to grow dense. I don't know what this is, he said, finally his voice low. Or what to call it. But I know it doesn't feel wrong. I didn't speak. Not right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know what to call it either. The bond, the pull, the comfort that came not from something romantic or forbidden, but from being seen and heard by someone in a way that no longer felt accidental. I think I said we're both just craving something honest. He turned to me then, slowly, his expression open but cautious, as if unsure whether to trust what he was feeling. And I understood that too well, because I was feeling it too. I don't want to mess this up, he said, a faint tremor in his voice. Whatever it is. You won't, I said softly. Not if we're careful. There was a stillness then heavier than before. A silence that didn't ask for space. It asked for presence. It asked us to stay in it even when we weren't sure what would come next. Ryan leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. He let out a breath like he'd been holding it for days. When you walked into my room earlier, he started. I glanced at him. I thought I'd feel embarrassed. Or angry. But I didn't. I felt seen. For the first time in a while. I looked down at my hands. They were clenched in my lap as if holding something I couldn't let go of. Maybe that's why I didn't turn away, I said. Because something in me recognized it too. He nodded slowly. The way you do when something clicks, not loud or dramatic, but true. Then he shifted closer. Just a little. Not enough to crowd me. Just enough to be there. I don't know where this goes, he whispered. But I don't want to pretend it didn't happen. Neither did I. I turned toward him fully this time. And there it was again, that look in his eyes, the kind that makes your breath catch not from shock or fear, but because you know something is about to change. I care about you, I said. I always have. But it's different now. And I don't want to lie to myself about that. His hand reached up, then slow, deliberate, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. It was such a small gesture, and yet it felt like the entire room shifted around it. We were quiet, still. Then he leaned in. I didn't stop him. Not because I was swept up in something reckless, but because in that moment nothing felt forced. Nothing felt like a mistake. It felt like two people holding on to something real in a world that so often asks us to pretend. His lips touched mine barely. A question, not an answer. Soft, gentle, careful. And when we pulled back, I kept my eyes closed for a second longer than I needed to. Because I knew. Everything had changed. The air was thick with questions we couldn't ask yet. But something had been said without words. Something permanent. The morning came slowly. Outside, the sky was pale and muted, like the house itself wasn't ready to wake up. A faint breeze moved the curtains by the window, and the distant sound of birdsong filtered through the glass like a lullaby meant for someone else. I stood in the kitchen in the same robe I'd worn the night before, my hands wrapped around a mug of coffee I hadn't taken a single sip from. The warmth felt good, but my mind was elsewhere. Upstairs, Ryan's door was closed again. We hadn't spoken since the moment we pulled away from each other in his room. No long conversation, no questions, no plan. Just that quiet kiss, and a shared look that said more than either of us could have put into words. I didn't feel regret, but I did feel the weight of it, the truth of it. Like stepping into a room and realizing the furniture has been rearranged, everything still familiar, but nothing in the same place it used to be. Mark would be home by noon. He'd send a text soon, probably asking if I wanted anything on his way back. Milk, maybe, or bagels. Something simple. Something that made life seem small and ordinary again. But I knew it wouldn't be. Not anymore. Because something had shifted between me and Ryan that couldn't be unshifted. And yet it hadn't become something terrible. It hadn't spiraled out of control. It had stayed. Still. Gentle. Real. I heard footsteps then. Soft on the stairs. I didn't look right away. He moved with that same cautious calm he always carried, like someone still learning how much space he was allowed to take up in the world. He stepped into the kitchen, a little rumpled, hair-tousled eyes searching. He didn't say anything at first, just nodded toward the kettle and asked coffee. I smiled faintly. Already made. He poured himself a cup, leaned against the counter across from me. The quiet between us wasn't strained. It was something else now. Familiar. Knowing. I've been thinking, he said. I looked up. I don't want to lose the way we talk to each other now. Whatever happens. Neither do I said. He took a sip. Let the steam rise between us. I know it's complicated, he added. And maybe it always will be. I nodded. That doesn't make it less real. He looked down at his mug. No, it doesn't. We stood there for a long time, side by side, not needing to fill the air. The house still held the weight of everything unspoken, but it also held something softer now. Something patient. He reached for the sugar jar and accidentally brushed my hand again. This time, we didn't freeze. We just looked at each other and smiled. I think we'll be okay, he said finally. I think so too, I replied. He turned to head back upstairs, his coffee in hand. But before he disappeared, he paused. Thanks for seeing me, he said. Thanks for letting me, I whispered. And then he was gone. leaving only the gentle hush of the kitchen, the warmth of the mug in my hand, and the quiet truth that we were both changed without needing to define it or explain it or rush into anything more. It wasn't a beginning, not exactly, but it wasn't an end either. It was just the space in between, where something honest had taken root. And for now, that was enough.